Hi everyone, I was 16 years old when the genocide of Mulivaikal happened. My generation got politicized by it, but the older generation undermined our effort when we wanted to start a new phase of the struggle. And now, no one seems to care about Mulivaikal anymore, besides in the month of May. It has been reduced to symbolic politics, something people used to gather around to have a good time. When it wasn't for the genocide of Gaza that is still going on, people would have forgotten Mulivaikal, like one of the massacres of the Second World War, where hundreds of thousands of Tamils died. While the survivors are gone, the most of the people have forgotten about it and moved on. So let's dive into today's subject about the Siam Burma Death Railway. In the late 1940s and into 1950s, construction works began in Kanchanaburi in Thailand. During these works, human remains were found, 10,000 in total, and these human remains belonged mostly to Tamils who died during the construction of the Siam-Burma Death Railway. After proper burial ceremonies were held, these human remains were reburied and put into a vault, and a tombstone was erected. But what was the Siam-Burma Death Railway, and why did many Tamils die during the construction of it? While Germany was on a conquest through Europe, their ally Japan was ravaging through Asia and was capturing many European colonies. They even captured Burma and stood on the doors of the Indian subcontinent. But after the Battle of Midway, Japan lost its naval superiority. This was problematic for Japan because the supply for Burma was coming through the sea, and American submarines were attacking it. Therefore, they were forced to build supply routes via land from Thailand, and this was the birth of the Siam-Burma Death Railway. The work for the railway began in September 1942 and ended in October 1943. In that year, 415 kilometers of railway lines were laid through dense jungle. These railway lines were laid by Allied POWs or civilian workers, and most of the civilian workers were Tamils from Malaysia, but many other communities were also involved, like the Javanese or the Chinese. It's estimated that around 60,000 Allied POWs and over 270,000 civilians were forced to build these railway lines. Initially, the Tamils from Malaysia were promised salaries for their work, but later they were forced. The Japanese brought whole families through the construction site. There they were forced to work under the heat without proper food. These dangerous works resulted in many deaths. Many diseases coming from the jungle environment and the lack of medical infrastructures resulted in heavy death tolls. Besides that, the Japanese guard were very cruel to the workers and beat them regularly and punished them for minor things. Around 12,000 Allied POWs died during the construction of the Siam-Burma Death Railway. But how many Tamils died, or generally to civilians, is not known, because neither the Japanese or the English, who initially controlled places like Malaysia, didn't have proper records of them. The estimation varies between 75,000 till 150,000 civilian workers, amongst them Tamils. It is important that we listen to the testimony of a former Allied POW who was forced to work at the Siam-Burma Death Railway to understand in what kind of situation the Tamils were.
And I can remember down in Kamburi when some of them had found their way down the line. There was a train line running alongside the camp, and often you'd see Tamils waiting on the side of the line, waiting for the train, and as it came, they'd just stand in front of it. They were that down in life that they would just wait to be run over by the train. And the vultures learned what they would do, and they would line up in the trees waiting for the train because they knew there was going to be a feed there. And that's the most miserable example of mankind that I think I've seen, to see those people. And I suppose now I feel sorry for them, but I suppose because of our own condition, our own position, we never gave them a thought. But they were, without doubt, the most downtrodden lot of the lot of us.
The Second World War ended with Japan's capitulation. Afterwards, many war crimes trials were held. many Japanese involved in the Siam-Burma death railway stood trials. But one case amongst these many cases stands out and gave a rare insight why many Tamils and civilian workers died in their tens of thousands during the construction of the Siam-Burma death railway, and what kind of cruelty the Tamils faced. Major Kudo Hikosaku and the other 11 members of the Japanese 19th Ambulance Division stood trial in Singapore. The trial started on the 13th September of 1946 and ended on the 18th October of 1946. This unit and Major Kudo was responsible for the hospital in Kanchanaburi and other hospitals and camps for the civilian workers of the Siam-Burma death railway. They were also responsible for the general and the medical care of the civilian workers. This unit also used POWs and civilian workers for the medical work. For this trial, 18 civilians and 43 former Allied POWs testified as witnesses. It's noteworthy that even a Tamil translator needed to be organized that the witness could be properly understood. These 12 members of the 19th Ambulance Division, also known as the Kudo Putai, faced 3 charges. They were accused of committing a war crime by mistreating civilian workers and their families under their medical care during the construction of the Siam-Burma death railway, causing widespread sufferings and many deaths. During the trial, it was proven that the living condition of the workers and their families were terrible. Every camp and hospital was poorly equipped or furnished. There was a lack of food, drinking water, sanitary facilities, and weatherproof facilities. Combined with the grueling work, many workers became ill. Once arrived in the hospital, there was a lack of medical staff and medicines. It was also proven that there was enough medicines, but it was reserved for the Japanese or was given to Thai prostitutes for sexual favors. In addition, the patients in the hospital had to do physical labor or had to perform exercises in the blazing sun for the enjoyment of the Japanese guards. The civilian workers were also regularly beaten. Witnesses testified that people were stripped naked and tied up in public, and there they were beaten at intervals. To that, the Japanese had a death hut system. These were shelters where the seriously ill were taken and left to die. During the trial, it was revealed that the Japanese injected them with poisonous substances to speed up the clearing of the death huts. Afterwards, the deceased patients were buried, sometimes with the living together.
I've seen camps where the Japs have made them dig a big hole before they vacated the camp, and they simply pushed all their dead into there, and then the Japs would go around and push in the dying ones as well, and just leave the great heap of these Tamils in particular, I suppose.
But the women suffered the most. During the trial, it came out that Major Kudo and his men raped the women regularly. Several witnesses testified about these incidents. Especially Major Kudo was the worst amongst the Japanese. When he was drunk, he went into the hospitals and raped the women there, or dragged them to a store where he mostly slept. One witness testified that Major Kudo organized regularly drinking parties where Tamil women were forced to dance naked for him and his buddies, and then they were raped. 2 cruel incidents came to light during the trial. In one incident, Major Kudo and his men dragged out a Tamil woman from her hut, who was pregnant, and then they all raped her in front of her husband. She died several weeks later, and her husband went mad because of it. In another incident, Lance Corporal Onodera went to a house of a young Indian woman, probably Tamil, and dragged her out. Lance Corporal Onodera beat her and raped her. Afterwards, he forced around 20 laborers to rape her too. Once they were finished, he lit up bamboo sticks and inserted her in her vagina. She died on the same night. They were accused of committing a war crime by participating in the indiscriminate killing of civilians. Besides killing many civilians with toxic injections in the death hut, many civilians who tried to flee met the same fate. That was also proven in the trial. They were accused of a war crime by abusing POWs who were assigned to assist them in their medical duties. Like the workers, the Allied POWs were often beaten by the Japanese. From the 12 accused, 1 didn't receive any sentence. 9 of them received various prison sentences, varying from 6 months till imprisonment for life. Major Kudo and Lance Corporal Onodera received the death penalty. Both of them were hanged on the 21st of January in 1947. While many Allied POWs returned home after the end of the war, the civilian workers stayed in these camps for several years, even after the end of the war. None of them received any compensation, and their plight was not very well known. The stories of the Allied POWs became very popular, especially through a movie named The Bridge on the River Kwai. But there was one Tamil survivor who regularly spoke about his experience on the Siam Burma Death Railway, and his name was Arumugham Kandasamy.
7 பேர் தான் திரும்பி வந்தோம். அந்த 7 பேரில் 6 பேரும் போயிட்டாங்க. இப்போ நான் ஒண்டி தான் இருக்கிறேன். இது கொஞ்சம் நஞ்ச ஆள் இறந்து போகலை. இது லட்சக்கணக்கில் பேர் இறந்துட்டாங்க. அதுவும் தமிழர்கள்.
He was 15 years old when he was forced to join the construction. But tragically, he died last year in November at the age of 97. The last Tamil survivor and this tragic part of the Tamil history died with him. Besides the Mullawaikal genocide, there are many other tragedies in the modern Tamil history, from the Madras famine and the Siam Burma Death Railway to the tragic plight of the Burmese Tamils and the hardship faced under the apartheid regime. These incidents shows what happens when a community is not sovereign. Yet, despite all these sufferings, there was one place where the Tamils refused to give in and fought back, and that's the struggle for Tamlulam. And that's the reason why many Tamils, within and beyond Ulam, supported the struggle for Tamlulam, because the birth of Tamlulam would have been a light in the dark chapters of the modern Tamil history. Thank you very much for your attention. Please leave a like or a comment in the comment section, and I wish you a nice day.